Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is Once Upon a Time. We're going to talk about the fantasies we impose on reality, whatever reality might be, and try to live through those fantasies, even though they can be soul crushing in their way. Um, before we get started, let's take, oh, hi, Rosalind. Good morning. Welcome, welcome. Great to be here with you and with everybody else who's joining us on this Friday. Um, before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating this brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel all those sensations, the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. Allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Once upon a time. The stories we tell ourselves, right? We grew up with Once Upon a Time and the fairy tales of yore. And the thing is that we have often internalized those fairy tales. You know, the biggest one for girls being Prince Charming fairy tale, right? And the bottom line of that fairy tale is that somebody's going to come and rescue us, essentially. And how living in that fairy tale, let's look at how living in that fairy tale that somebody's going to come rescue us uh, is a really destructive place to be residing. That when we believe that somebody's going to come rescue us, first of all, it reinforces our sense of our own helplessness, our lack of sovereignty, and it also puts us in a position where we use that filter to sort for people, like, and it puts us in a really vulnerable place to be looking to be rescued. I used to look to be rescued. I've worked with people who are looking to be rescued, and it's such a disempowering come from, really. And it's the foundation. Let's say we do find somebody to rescue us. It's the foundation of a codependent relationship. And what happens is if you get rescued, if you get healthy, then the rescuer has lost their purpose, right? Because they were there to rescue. The rescuer needs to rescue. And it can be perpetuating a cycle because that rescuer needs to keep you in a position where you need to be rescued over and over again. It gets to be this very dark spiral of dysfunction. I was up with a friend. I woke up at like 1 o'clock in the morning and was talking to a friend on the West Coast. So it was earlier for them, but ended up talking until like 3 in the morning. Um, I don't think I got to sleep until 4 in the morning about this moving out of this dynamic. We've been talking about it for a little while, but I think that it's not uncommon, which is one of the reasons why I'm putting so much time and attention in this area, where we get into really dysfunctional relationships with others and really with ourselves, dysfunctional relationship with ourselves to be disempowering ourselves to a point where we believe we need to be rescued. And good morning, Kimberly. Welcome. It's so good to have you here with us this morning. We're talking about once upon a time and the fairy tales we tell ourselves, and how those fairy tales can really be tremendously disempowering and also keep us from realizing the impact of certain dynamics, certain roles that we play in relationship to others and in relationship to ourselves. There are times when we do feel helpless, no question. And there are times when we are in situations that are calling for an intervention, especially being powerless as children in dysfunctional families. Certainly, the desire is to be rescued, to please help me out of this situation. And at the same time, as we pull those patterns into adulthood, the it's sort of the seed of a very destructive cycle to be wanting and needing to be rescued. We will draw in people that will maybe appear to rescue us. But the thing is, again, a rescuer needs to continue to be able to rescue. So that person, in some way, shape, or form, is going to be very invested in your incapability, in your lack of capability to take care of yourself. And what happens is it's in an insidious way, and it may not be in a malicious way, and it may be in a malicious way. That person is going to cultivate your dependence upon them. And oftentimes that dependence is created through really subversive kinds of emotional power plays and manipulations. So, it's interesting to witness how we cultivate these fairy tales for ourselves and also about others. Like it makes me think of Little Red Riding Hood, and the wolf in grandma's clothing, trying to convince the Little Red Riding Hood that he's grandma, that he's safe, that he's an ally, when in fact he's not. And I know I've said it before, but I find it endlessly fascinating to see the games that we play with ourselves and with each other. And it's not when I say games, it's not playful necessarily. It's more like war games in its way. To see some of the dynamics that go on between people. And so in this particular situation, there was a particularly cruel breach of trust that occurred, and maybe the ultimate gift, because hopefully it pushed this person over the edge to be able to say enough is enough. The psychological abuse, I'm done. That there's a point at which hopefully we each reach that place of no return where we're just done. And that's a moment of grace, as painful as that moment might be, where that boundary is breached with certain finality. That is a gift in its way, right? Because it enables one to free oneself from the grips of this fantasy of who another person might be, or what the relationship is. And it's interesting to me how we play out the same stories over and over and over. Where we'll extricate ourselves from a toxic relationship and then recreate it and recreate it and recreate it until we are able to clear and complete and heal the underlying wound. And in the case of this particular person, their boundaries were deeply violated as a child. And so love got very confused with pain and lack of self determination, where they were violated as a child, and it got all mixed up with love from a parent, and the confusion still reigns, this parity between love and violation, or love and no respect, lack of respect for their will and well-being. And so playing that out over and over again is kind of the natural tendency of things until we get into that deep healing. And there has to be a will, there has to be a willingness, there has to be a moment of choice to say that's enough. And then beyond that, to do the work, to dive in, to say, well, what is it? Let's heal whatever that underlying thing is. And the need to be comforted and rescued, the comfort always came with deep violation. And when comfort and deep violation are paired, trying to excavate and extract these things from one another it's not an easy thing. And so we replicate our first relationships until we heal them. the relationships within our families with our parents have a profound and lasting impact. They say that boys marry their mothers and girls marry their fathers, at least the first time around. And I don't know if that's true or not true. I've seen it be true in a lot of cases, actually. And that's what happens if we don't find our path to healing, whatever those early wounds were. Because we're taught how to love. We're taught how to think of others and how to treat others and how to treat ourselves. And we're taught how to be loved, even if it's very, very dysfunctional. And we often have to spend a good portion of our lives trying to detangle, trying to disassemble these toxic patterns that we have. I do believe it's doable. It is doable. It's not easy, but it's doable. And it's funny, over the past week, I've had a bunch of conversations with people around suffering. And, that's another part of the fairy tale land where we've been indoctrinated to believe that there's merit in suffering just by virtue of suffering, that being a martyr is something that is meritorious. And, experiencing that pain. I don't think we need to be seeking pain. Life brings enough pain with it, right? And the thing is that pain is part of living. Suffering doesn't have to be. And suffering is sort of a function of how we integrate or don't integrate, resist or don't resist that pain. Allowing ourselves to experience the pain that we experience and to move through it to a point of completion, that's called healing. As we keep replaying it and replaying it and replaying it and revitalizing it over and over and over again, that's suffering. And it was very interesting, where one person was saying, I just want the suffering to stop. And what's the key to stop suffering? Stop suffering. Just stop. And I know that it may sound callous, it may sound oversimplistic, but it's like, it hurts when I'm banging my head against the wall. Well, stop banging your head against the wall. And the thing is that we get in these programmed cycles that are such that we don't know how to stop. And I get that. Or we don't have the will to stop because we have this emotional driver that supersedes our rationality. And we were talking this week about how malleable our thoughts and our beliefs and our emotions truly are. And with this person, I've spoken to you about how we shifted their thinking about this other toxic person to be recognizing the flaws, to be recognizing the toxicity rather than the goodness and the sweetness that had been there. There's a point, perhaps, hopefully, that this person will be able to get to neutrality where they can appreciate the good and appreciate the bad and not be pulled back into this deep conflict, this deep emotional roller coaster. Roller coaster is way too benign a term. This was really torture. It was emotional torture that went on for years. But initially, to be able to extricate themselves, they were able to switch the way that they were thinking, or to be direct, to be able to choose directly, to put the focus on a place that gave them the strength to say no. And rather than live in the fairy tale of how they wanted it to be, and if only, and but if, and, you know, wishing reality away in such a way that they kept going back for more and more pain. And I invite us all to look where in our lives we keep inviting ourselves to go back for more and more pain, you know, the cause of our suffering. And it's so often relationship, how we want something to be different from the way that it is. And there is freedom and peace and wisdom in accepting things as they are. And I don't mean being complacent. I mean recognizing things as they are, allowing things to be as they are, and then taking appropriate action in response to, rather than in reaction to, what's present. So Rosalind says, what you sow is what you reap. This is so true even in our personal, I mean, even in our own little world, right? Being habitually critical versus walking away. Is it easier to put on a pair of shoes rather than try to flatten all the rough ground? I love that, Rosalind. That's such an amazing metaphor. I never heard that before, but I love it. It is easier to be kind, tolerant, and detached than to try and change and improve everybody. So there is a place where neutrality at the very best is better for well-being than kindness. And maybe we can have kindness in our heart, but what happens, what I see is a perversion of kindness that a lot of people engage in, where I'm going to be kind, and it's to my detriment and to my endangerment. And that's not kindness. That's foolishness, I think, where we're martyring ourselves, where we're sacrificing ourselves to something that sacrifice doesn't even register for. So there are certain behaviors that should not be tolerated. And it's very important as people who are caring and compassionate and want to see the best in others, that we allow ourselves to see what's there, that we allow ourselves to see what's there and to respond accordingly. It's important. It's important. And it's a matter of kindness to oneself as well. Like, you count in the equation. And you're right. We don't, to stop trying to change and improve everybody. See what's there and act accordingly. You cannot change a person that is not wanting to change. We need to choose to change ourselves, right? And you can support somebody that's committed, but that's a whole different thing. You know, you cannot save someone from themselves unless they want to be saved. That's just how it is. And you cannot rescue someone from themselves unless they want to be rescued, unless they are willing to rescue themselves also. And it's a hard thing. It's a really hard thing. So putting on the shoes, allowing yourself some distance. It's an act of self-respect, and it's an act of respect for what's so. It's part of being present. Sometimes we have to manipulate our emotions to give ourselves the strength to do what needs to be done. And then hopefully we can come to a better place in the future. I mean, we don't have to be mean, we don't have to be cruel, but we can be direct and we can be clear. And it's not always easy. So anyway, it's Friday. I wish you a wonderful weekend. I am starting my month off. So this first week of the month, I will not be here. There will be replays. I've forgotten whether I'm going to be here next Friday or not. Kimberly says, absolutely. I learned this. Thank you for sharing. Kimberly, thank you for being here. Rosalind, thank you for being here. Everybody who's joined us, we so appreciate you being part of this, the ongoing conversation about being a human being. That's what we're up to. And so with that, I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. I go live each weekday morning here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I just am so grateful to you. Kimberly says, woohoo, have a wonderful time. Miss you when you're gone. Enjoy. Thank you so much. Rosalind says, enjoy your time off. Have a good weekend, everyone. Thank you. So much love to all of you. Until next time, we'll see you soon.